This video is part B of a three-part series on the new Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate. Since the actual cutting of the various projects was quite long, I decided to put this testing in a separate video. So in this part B, I'll describe and demonstrate the actual cutting of the various segmented ring projects using this new bandsaw mounting plate for the Accu-Wedge system. The purpose of this testing was to confirm that I can get the same accuracy and precision with this new mounting system that I previously demonstrated with the Accu-Wedge system mounted on the Accu-Slice system. I will slice a number of segmented rings with 8, 18, and 24 segments per ring in a completed segmented disc. I'll also demonstrate the cutting of 12 segment rings with the segments all going to a perfect point in the center of the segmented disc with no gap in the center of the segmented disc. And finally, I'll demonstrate the production of some trapezoid-shaped segmented rings. These techniques have all been shown in my previous videos on cutting segmented wedges using the Accu-Wedge system. I'll describe the results of this testing at the end of this video. Okay, I'm ready to cut my first set of segmented disc, and I'm going to be cutting 18 segments. That's the number I like to use a lot for a lot of my projects. And I'll be making a disc that's going to be about 4 1/4 inches in diameter. So I have a piece of wood here, and I did mark a line on this board. You always want to mark a line so you know how to orient your pieces when you're gluing them back together. So I'll be mounting it on my Accu-Wedge system. Now your board, you have to make sure a couple things. Number one, the board has to be perfectly straight. If this board is warped or twisted, you're going to get inaccurate results. So the board needs to be straight with no warping in the board. I usually run this through my edge sander or my board planer or board sander to get my sides, both sides, this side and this side, perfectly straight. So let me go and make my first cut here. And again, as always, I'm using a 3/4 inch wide blade, 14 teeth per inch. You always need a 3/4 inch wide blade with the Accu-Wedge system. When I first developed this, I tried using a 1/2 inch wide blade. I almost scrapped the system because I wasn't getting consistent results. When I tried cutting a board out of MDF, it came out perfect with a 1/2 inch wide blade. When I used a wood board, I got inaccurate results. And the difference is the grain. So what's happening is when you're cutting with the grain or across the grain, you get nice straight cuts. But when you start cutting at an angle across the grain, you have more resistance on one side of the blade than the other. And that resistance causes that blade to twist, and you get inaccurate cuts. By going to a 3/4 inch wide blade, it's a wider blade, has more tension on it, and that blade drift issues went away. So always with the Accu-Wedge, you want to use 3/4 inch wide blades, either 14 or even 10 teeth per inch. I prefer 14, but 10 teeth per inch also works quite well. So my first thing is to make my first cut. Give me an angle piece. The other thing, I always clamp my boards. You cannot hold these boards. That blade going at an oblique angle across the grain will pull the board. And you try and hold it by hand, it'll move on you. So it's very important you always clamp your boards. So let me just cut a piece off here to give me a starting edge. This is the actual cutting speed. I always cut slowly when I'm making these cuts. The slower you cut, the smoother the cuts. Now I want my wedges to have an outside edge here of 0.75 inches. I find that gives me the exact size I need for this project. So let me set this to 0.75. Just not there. Okay, what I'm doing now is I have my Accu-Stop set and trying to keep that, again, parallel to the edge of my Accu-Wedge system. I have my ramp, and the purpose of the ramp is so that the boards, when they fall off, don't get jammed against the bandsaw blade. So, and this ramp comes with the Accu-Wedge system. So again, what I do is I take my board, push it against the stop. Make sure the stop is locked. Push the board down against the table, against the rail here, and then tighten it, and then do my cut. And then after I take my cut, I'll measure it to see if it's too short or too long. comes out as 0.781, so it's a little too long. So all I do is loosen the tightening knob on my Accu-Stop, and just like maybe a quarter turn is all I need, and then tighten it back up. And whenever I go from this fence to this fence, I always sand the fuzzies off the edge. Don't need to do it to go to this carriage, but go into this carriage you do. This. And I got 0.753, which is close enough. And you notice I was cutting slowly. The slower you cut, the smoother it cuts. And you can see the finish on those cuts. It's pretty good. Now you do get a burr where it kicks out the bandsaw blade. That burr needs to be sanded off. And on the bottom edge, where the blade goes down, you get a fuzzy, so you need to sand that off, but the top is clean. So the only sanding I do in these pieces is sanding off that burr and sanding off that fuzzies. Let me go ahead and make 18 of those, and let's see what kind of disc we get. There's a whole series of videos on our website on how to cut perfect wedges. All the various tips to use as far as, clamping it, holding it tight against the fence, getting it centered in the Accu-Stop, the boards being perfectly straight and parallel. All these tips are in those videos to give you perfect wedges when you make the segmented disc with your Accu-Wedge system. Through the remaining sections of this video, I'll be speeding up the actual cutting by 10 times the actual cutting speed, just for viewing purposes. Okay, that's 18 segments, and I purposely did not use my dust collector. I didn't turn it on for this operation. To show you the difference, you can see all the sawdust piled up here. Almost nothing here. A little bit here where it goes over the edge, but basically nothing in here. And my roller bearings should be pretty clean. And they are. So these double dust shields definitely work quite nicely. But it does go underneath this front dead shield because there's a bunch of sawdust in here between the two dust shields. So let me go sand these. I showed sanding many times in previous videos, so I won't show it again here. But let me sand these, assemble in a disc, and see how it looks. Okay, after sanding those pieces, I put them in a ring, put a rubber band around them, and there's my segmented disc. There's the top side and the back side. Okay, let's make a couple more with some different numbers of segments. Let's say 24 segments per disc. Just loosen my jig. And there's 24. And there's 24. I want the wedges to be about 0.53 inches, so a little bit smaller wedge for this project. Well, I did run that dust collector, and a lot less sawdust, and there's nothing in here. This is really clean, there's nothing. A little bit out here, but the vacuum cleaner picked up most of it, and between these two dust shields, almost nothing went across. Did a real great job. So that's 24 segments, so let me go ahead and clean those up. Well, I have this board set up. Let me do the opposite. Let me go down and do maybe the other extreme, maybe do 8 segments. So I get this and I set it down to 8 segments. I want my segments to be a little bit bigger now. Okay, here's our 24 segment ring. And look at both sides. Here's the 8. As we've shown before, this was the 18. So next we're going to do 12 segments per disc, go into a perfect point in the center. We start off by changing this to 12. Now you can see what happened here. My ramp was too far away from the blade and the board was getting stuck in there. So let me move the ramp closer to the blade. You want it close but not touching. Actually, I can do my adjustment in the other direction. I'll show you why in a minute. When I cut that direction, I get a burr on the end, which I need to sand off. And actually, there's a little bit of a flat on there, so it's a little bit too big. What I normally like to do is push the board against my stop, then take it up against the bandsaw blade. And I should be able to feel the teeth on this side of the blade, and I can't, so I know it's too big. So let me go over here, and I'm going to loosen my knob here, and I turn it, maybe a quarter of a turn. Push the board against the stop, push it in, and I still can't feel the teeth, so it's not quite enough. Another eighth of a turn. That's pretty close. You can just barely feel the teeth of the blade. What happens if the blade is cutting on this side of the wedge, this side of the board tends to pull the blade out and curve it out, and you don't get perfect wedges. If it's too far in this direction, of course you get this high piece or a flat piece on the edge of your piece. So you like to get a perfect point, but not get on the side, because it'll cause the board to, cause the blade to move and give you an inaccurate cut. But I think we're pretty close there. Often this is trial and error. Usually I end up cutting a disc, and if there's a hole in the center, I move it over here and just adjust it. So it might take one or two redos to get a perfect wedge. So let me go ahead and try this, see how it comes out. And you can see there might be a little bit of a flat on there. It might not be quite enough. In fact, I don't think it's quite enough. I'm going to move it over here more. Now I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Now I'll make my 12 wedges, and I have enough board here I can readjust it and make another 12. But I think I'll get a small hole in the center, because I think I have a little bit of a flat there, but it's close. So let me make 12 of these. Unfortunately, something happened to the camera at this portion of the video. I don't know if the battery went dead or what happened, but I totally lost the remaining footage of cutting these segments going to a perfect point in the center. But the results are shown in the conclusion at the end of this video. Okay, the next project is to make some trapezoid shaped segmented disc. So the first thing I did, I tilted my bandsaw blade. So we tilted to 105 degrees. And then I will lower my blade guide guides. Always try and keep these as low as possible just for safety. So my table's tilted to 105 degrees. I set my number of segments to 18, so I'm making 18 segments. And I'm using 2 contrasting woods so you can see the pattern. And I got to use the 2 fences. And if you've seen this in some previous videos, I take the one piece, make my cuts, turn it 180 degrees, cut it again, and keep going back and forth, each time rotating 180 degrees. And do that on this board. And then a second board I cut on the second fence to do that same process. And then this will make 2 segmented disc trapezoid pattern with 18 segments per disc with alternating colors. Okay, so let's get started cutting. I got my lines on both boards, and these boards are both run through my board planer, or my board sander, to get them exactly the same thickness and the same width. Again, that's important for these to match up when you glue them up. Because the bandsaw table is tilted, I had to go to a shorter ramp with a steeper angle so that the pieces will fall away from the bandsaw blade. So repeat the same process with the second board. So I'll take these new 2 sets of wedges and sand them, and then assemble them into some segmented disc. Well, there's the 2 segmented trapezoid disc. These are pretty hard to see since they slip and slide. So let me go ahead and glue these up. And also the surfaces are irregular on the outside. So let me go ahead and glue these up so we can better see what they're going to look like when they're done. And I just glued up the other set of trapezoid shaped segmented discs. And so while that's drying, I want to cut up some more, make some more discs. I'm working on a project right now, some segmented eggs. And I want one of these trapezoid segmented disc in the middle of it. So again, I'm using 18 segments per ring. I'm using some red heart and maple contrasting woods. So now I'm ready to cut the maple board. And I have not been using the vacuum system, because I want to see how much sawdust is getting inside. And there's almost nothing. These double shields are working really well. You can see sawdust is getting past this first shield, but very little past the second shield. So it's keeping my roller bearings much cleaner. And there's the 2 trapezoid shaped segmented disc, just rubber band together, so they're ready to be glued. As a conclusion to this new mounting system for the Accu-Wedge system, it works quite well. These double shields definitely do a great job of keeping sawdust from getting into your bearings on your Accu-Wedge system. So they work great. Accuracy of the system is good. My disc roll coming out, perfect. I made 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 segmented disc here for this video. And I'll be making more. I'll be leaving this on my bandsaw just because this is my second bandsaw and I have the Accu-Slice system on the other bandsaw. So I'll be leaving this on here for doing my segmenting work. So I'm quite pleased with the operation of it. So we'll be selling this now. It'll be listed on our website. I need to go to the website now and generate some new graphics for it. But it'll consist of 3 components. It consists of the rail, which is the 35-inch rail, this mounting plate with the dust shield, and then the mounting pieces that go in the slot in the miter bar slot on the bandsaw table. So if you need to buy a system, you can either buy the Accu-Wedge with the Accu-Slice system, or you can buy the Accu-Wedge with the flat table mounting system. So we'll be selling both versions of them. I just finished testing this mounting plate for the Accu-Wedge, which enables the Accu-Wedge to be mounted directly to the bandsaw table, not requiring the Accu-Slice system. And I did a bunch of testing just to confirm that it operates in the same manner that the system works on the Accu-Slice system. So I cut a variety of segmented disc. I cut some regular segmented disc going from 8, 18, and 24 segments per layer. Then I made some segmented disc going to a perfect point in the center. And then I made some trapezoid-shaped segmented disc. And this is all different techniques I've used and had in various other videos in the past. In general, I'm quite pleased with the system. In fact, I almost like it better than using it on the Accu-Slice system, mainly because of the double dust shield. That really does shield the bearings on the rollers on the Accu-Wedge system, so they don't get clogged up near as easy. But as far as performance, I'd say it's identical to operating on the Accu-Slice system. So let me show a couple close-ups of some of these pieces so you can see the final joints. I did glue up a bunch of these, so I actually glued them up and then I took them to my edge sander, sanded them smooth both on surfaces and on the edges so you can see the joints. And I have a couple more I made here that are not glued up yet. So I made about a dozen segmented discs using different techniques just to show that the joints come out nice and tight and operate just as well as on the Accu-Slice system. Let me start with the first disc I made. This was 18 segments. And there's how the edge looks. And the opposite side. Nice grain on this wood. It came out really nice. But nice tight joints. They came out really good. So that's the 18 segments per layer. Then I made 24 segments per layer. Same thing. There's the edge, and there's the opposite side. And then I made 8 segments per layer. Then I made 2 discs go into a perfect point in the center. And I mentioned this is probably the most difficult cut to make on the system because it's really hard to get that exactly right. But these both came out really good. In fact, I can already see the center point. There's the edge. There's the opposite side. So that's the one. Here's the second one. These were a little bit different. One was a little bit tighter than the other, but in reality I can't see the difference at this point. Unfortunately, my video camera hung up in making the video of showing the actual production of these 2 segmented discs, but I am planning a subsequent video in the future, and this upcoming video will describe how to produce segmented discs going to a perfect point in the center. You have a lot of pointers on how to accomplish this. Then I made some trapezoid segmented discs by tilting the bandsaw blade to 105 degrees, and these are 18 segments per layer. Here's the first 2 that I made. There's your trapezoid segments, and the opposite side. Again, nice tight joints. They came out really good. Then I actually made 8 of these with some red heart and maple wood. I actually made these for a project I'm working on. I'm working on some segmented eggs, and these are going to be the center pieces for those eggs. But again, just looking at the joints, they're nice and tight. Those would be real nice. Then I made a couple other ones. Here's one with, it's not glued up yet, but this is some yellow heart. It's not glued up yet, so these are all loose. But just some different woods I make, because I am working on a couple projects right now to use this. This concludes part B of this video series on the Accu-Wedge bandsaw mounting plate. For a more detailed description of this system, please view part A of this video series. We're also planning a part C of this video series, which will describe how we machine the various components for this system. Once again, thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, please give us a call or drop us an email. And thank you.